You're watching Tim Topham TV, the piano teaching podcast. This is episode 31. Hi everyone, and thanks for watching this episode of Tim Topham TV, when we'll be continuing our series about some of the biggest music examination boards in the world, this week focusing on the Royal Conservatory of Music in Canada. As you know, we're right in the middle of practice and motivation month here at timtopham.com, and there's no doubting that upcoming examinations can be a huge motivator for students. Although some might argue that their motivational bias of an exam is more towards the extrinsic end of the spectrum and something that might be applied by parents and teachers and things like that. But I would argue that it could go both ways depending on how you frame your exams in your studio. Regardless, many teachers will agree that they never see their students practice as much as they do during the months or weeks leading up to an exam. And so that's why I think it's an important discussion to have. So we've already covered a number of the exam boards in Australia and the ABRSM, for example, in England. So now we head over to Canada, where I'll be interviewing Elaine Rusk, who is the Vice President of the Royal Conservatory Certificate Program. And I'll tell you about Elaine in just a moment. So look, exams aren't going to be right for every student in your studio, but if examinations are offered in your part of the world, I would definitely consider whether they could be a lever that you can pull as part of your motivational strategy and part of your general teaching mix. So Elaine Rusk holds a Bachelor of Music in History, Theory and Performance and a Master of Music Criticism from McMaster University. She's worked as a performer, an accompanist, a piano teacher, Director of Music and an organist. She's worked in music publishing, that's at the Frederick Harris Music Co, and she is now Vice President over at the Royal Conservatory of Music. We have a great discussion here. I learn a lot, and I think you'll all gain a lot from this, even if you're not directly in Canada itself, because a lot of the kind of topics that we talk about, as you'll know from these other interviews in regard to exams, are quite broad-based pedagogical aspects of teaching that can be relevant in your studios regardless of the approach that you take with regard to exams. So I hope you enjoy this interview. There's lots of links on the show note page, so make sure you head to timtopham.com/episode 31 for those. And without further ado, here is my interview with Elaine Rusk. Well, Elaine, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for being available to speak with us.
Thank you, Tim. It's very nice to meet you, even if we are thousands of miles away.
And in different time zones and everything. Look, I just want to, before we get started, get the wording right, because we're talking about the RCM, the Royal Conservatory of Music, but you've got a thing called the Music Development Program. And so I'm just wondering, when I talk about this, what do I use? Is it RCM? Is it Music Development Program? Is it MDP? Or what do I use? And how do they work together?
Good question. So the name of the organization is the Royal Conservatory of Music. We use the term RCM all the time. The Music Development Program, which is officially the Royal Conservatory Music Development Program, is simply the name that we give to the program for our U.S. customers.
Okay.
It's the same program, same content, same resources, same examiners, but that's the U.S. brand.
Okay, so if I was in Canada and I went for an exam, I'd say I'm going for an RCM exam, whereas
Right.
if I was in New York and using your program, I'd say I'm going for a Music Development Program exam. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
For the purposes of our conversation today, though, I think we're comfortable just talking about the RCM or the Royal Conservatory because our American friends understand that we're the parent company.
Yeah, got it. Okay. So can you tell us just a little bit about how you came to be involved in the RCM?
Well, sure. Like I think most, or certainly many Canadian music students, and I started taking piano lessons when I was 5. I grew up through the RCM system, as it were. So I followed the graded levels, took exams, learned the various repertoire, and so on. And then I had actually several different careers, but I'll admit that, like many, I started teaching piano when I was a teenager and had a few students. And then I had a different career and actually walked away from that career at age 34, went off to university, did a master's degree, and then found myself wondering what I would be doing next. Hadn't really thought about what that career might be, but obviously thought about applying to the Royal Conservatory of Music. So I started at the Royal Conservatory of Music in 1997, but I've been teaching the program since I was about 16,
Right.
and certainly studied through the program. it's a real privilege to work here because it's been such a part of my musical upbringing and helped me stay interested in my studies and learn more and keep progressing and so on.
Fantastic. So you better tell us just a little bit about the background of the Royal Conservatory,
Sure.
how long it's been around and that sort of thing.
Well, we've been around since 1886.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. We're getting close to our 130th anniversary, which will be a big celebration. And the publishing division of the Royal Conservatory, which is the Frederick Harris Music Company, which some people are familiar with because of the books that support the curriculum, that company's been around since 1904, and it's now a branch of the Royal Conservatory of Music. So we have a long history. We actually have upwards of 5 million alumni. Some very famous people like Glenn Gould, Oscar Peterson, Diana Krall, former Prime Minister Stephen Harper even had his great night.
There you go. Is the conservatory a conservatory in the classical sense of it, where university level training happens as well as these graded music exams?
Yes, that's a very good question. Within the organization called the Royal Conservatory, we actually have a beautiful bricks and mortar building downtown with 3 concert halls. There's a modern part fused onto the historic building. Within the school, we have the Glenn Gould School, which is a school for elite, very skilled musicians, kind of like Juilliard, where students come and have a lot of performing opportunities and master classes. We have the Phil and Ellie Taylor Performance Academy, which is for young gifted students. Again, they come for classes, they have private lessons, lots of performance opportunities, and many of them are competition winners. Tony Yang, a graduate of the Young Persons Academy here, was recently the 5th place winner at the International Chopin competition. Wow. There's also what we call the Royal Conservatory School, which is a typical community school for people nearby to come for lessons. We have programs for early childhood. And then we have, of course, an opera program. And then there's the exams and the publishing. So there are a lot of different things. We have something else called Learning Through the Arts, which is a program whereby people in the arts, whether it be dance, music, drama, go into the public schools and teach other subjects like math, geometry, and history through the arts. And that is taking place in various places across Canada as well.
It sounds massive. It's a huge organisation covering a lot of different areas. Now, you're Vice President of the Royal Conservatory Certificate Program. So is that the exam system? Is that what they call the exam system?
So in fact, the Royal Conservatory Certificate Program is the official name for the exam system.
Right.
And my job as Vice President, I'm in charge of academics, which is the exam curriculum, the examiners. I have a wonderful team of people that work with me. I'm also in charge of the publishing division, Frederick Harris Music. And in fact, I've been associated with that part of the company for a very long time, since I started here in '97.
I think I met some of the great Frederick Harris people at NCKP in Chicago.
I bet you did.
Yeah, it was quite a substantial publishing company. Over in Australia, we really mainly have Hal, Leonard and Alfred, who then distribute, I assume, Frederick Harris and a number of other places.
That's right.
So we don't know these names quite so well, but I know our American listeners will be very familiar with it.
Yes, indeed.
So what are the key goals of the certificate program, the exam system for the Royal Conservatory?
Well, we actually believe that music is important to everybody in everybody's lives. And we believe in the enrichment that music brings to every person. And that's our goal and our mandate, that music is for everybody and not just taking lessons. We're developing future concert goers, people who appreciate music. We have programs for adults, music appreciation programs and things like that as well. So that really is our goal. In fact, we have an official mission statement, which maybe I'll read to you, because then I'll absolutely get it right. So, just very concisely, the mission of the Royal Conservatory is to develop human potential through leadership in music and the arts. So we believe in the transformative power of music for everybody.
Yeah. How would it's an interesting mission. I hadn't read it, so thank you for sharing it with us. The leadership aspect of it. That's an interesting one to add in an exam board mission statement. How does that play out in the system or the exam room?
Oh, that's a good question. So, first of all, when we think about the Royal Conservatory, we always think about the exams as part of a bigger picture.
Okay.
So, exams aren't the end result. The exams are a way of structuring the curriculum and music education and providing a celebration of achievement for students who are taking lessons so they can aspire to take those exams each year and succeed as they move forward. And in terms of leadership, one of the things that we're always thinking about is how to continue to engage today's students, today's teachers, to make sure that the program is rich and interesting for them, and also to think about new ideas and new ways of doing things. And certainly right now we're spending a lot of time thinking about how to reach out through the World Wide Web, through the internet.
So it's about being I'm picturing the leader up the front of a room or whatever, but it's more about being leading in the way things are done, always striving to do different things and stay in tune with the current reality of children and that sort of thing.
I think that's a very good way to characterize it, yes.
Great. Okay, so let's get on to some more of the specifics. You offer piano exams. Obviously, most of my listeners are piano teachers. What type of exams are offered in that area?
So, first of all, we also offer exams for almost every other instrument you can think of, including harpsichord, organ, flute, recorder, and so on. For our piano exams, we really have only one type of exam, as it were. A piano exam consists of the performance of repertoire, etudes, technique. There's an ear test component and a sight reading component. I know that in some examination boards, there's a separation between sort of standard classical, conservative type of exams and then popular music exams. We've decided to address the interest and the support for popular music by incorporating it into the exams as a whole. So we've done that in a couple of ways. In the most recent piano syllabus that was published in 2015 and the celebration series that supports it, those who are familiar with our previous syllabi and so on will notice that there are more pieces that are written in popular and jazz styles. Now, I say popular and jazz styles because these are typically pieces that are written by composers for the instrument. So they're not pop tunes and things like that, but you'll see pieces by people like Dennis Alexander, Elisa Milne from Australia, Forrest Kinney has something in there, Christopher Norton, lots of pieces by Christopher Norton. And so these are pieces in a contemporary style that appeal to students.
Contemporary piano solos. Yep.
Exactly. So, but these are written for the instrument. As well, teachers have the option of a teacher's choice where they can choose a piece that's suitable for that level that the student is interested in. We also have what we call the popular selection list. And this is a separate syllabus that is a supplement to the piano syllabus where we list some of the excellent arrangements of popular songs, TV and movie themes, and so on. And as you know, in the last couple of decades, some really fine arrangements have been written and published by Alfred and Hal Leonard and so on. So students can play their favorite Star Wars theme or the music from Frozen.
Don't start on that, Elaine.
Oh, let it go.
Yeah, very clever.
And so with that syllabus, we obviously aren't publishing the resources. Hal Leonard, Alfred, and others own the copyrights, but we publish a syllabus that allows students to select one of those pieces that's at their level that they can use on their traditional exams. So basically, we're embracing all music styles as opposed to segregating them into different things.
Got it. So when a student, let's say, we'll just pick a grade 4, I assume they're numbered grades?
They are.
Yep. So let's say a student's going for grade 4. How many pieces would they have to do? And do they have to do sort of I know you mentioned etudes, let's leave them apart. Just the actual performance pieces, do they need to do a Baroque one and a classical one and a pop one or anything? Or is it free? Or how does that work?
Well, in fact, you've really nailed it. For most levels, up until level 8, the students play three pieces. And yes, our music curriculum is divided into lists. So in the early levels, we have a preparatory A and preparatory B level that are really for beginners to bring them. They can still use whatever method book they're studying from, whether it be Alfred, Hal Leonard, Favorite Piano Adventures. They can use those materials and select some that are on the syllabus list to take an exam. When they get to levels 1 and 2, we have list A, B, and C. List A is Baroque and classical, and you can imagine at that level, not much Baroque. List B is romantic and contemporary, lots of those fun pieces that they love to play. And we do something unusual for list C in levels 1 and 2. The students are required to play simple two-part inventions. This is to develop that idea of understanding counterpoint independence between the hands. At level 3, we no longer have the inventions because you start to see that in the Baroque pieces. We're getting into the Anna Magdalena book and so on. So in levels 3 through 7, they play three pieces. The list A piece is Baroque, the list B piece is classical, and the list C list contains romantic and contemporary literature. At level 8, we separate the romantic and contemporary into two lists. We continue that through level 9, and then level 10, they have to play 5 pieces. To support the repertoire, the students beginning at level 1 and 2 play one etude, and our etudes contain traditional etude-like pieces by Czerny, Heller, Bugmüller, and so on, but they also contain lots of little art pieces by some of our favorite piano composers because they address a specific technical element. And in levels 3 through 10, the students play 2 etudes.
Okay, and is that in addition to technical work and stuff?
Yes, so the technical work beginning at the various earliest levels is, 5-finger patterns, then we move into scales, chords, arpeggios, and it's sequenced through the levels so the students continue to grow. And obviously, it's not cumulative in terms of exam requirements because the list would become awfully long. But what we're doing is testing along the way to ensure that students are moving through different keys and learning the skills they need to support the repertoire that they're playing.
Yeah, very important, obviously. And I think, I mean, some exam boards can almost get out of control with the number of arpeggios and scales that students need to learn at those higher levels. If you try and be cumulative, it's becomes impossible.
9 and 10 are pretty daunting.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Interestingly, you mentioned, so those levels, we go from prep 1 and 2, preparatory 1 and 2, and then grade 1 to 10. Is that right?
Right.
Or levels
Yes.
1 to 10, I think you called them.
That's right.
Interestingly enough, I have your celebration series books, but I actually didn't know they were connected with an exam board. I just bought them. I bought them outright because they were some really great collections of music. So there you go. I've learned something today.
Well, you know what, Tim? It's interesting that you say that because colleagues and friends in the United States that have been buying the books, the Celebration series, before we even offered exams in the States because of the way the books contain a variety of pieces. And in fact, for some of my friends down there, when the exams became available, it's like, oh yes, we know these pieces. This is great.
Yeah. So where in the world can people get examined on this syllabus? Is it just the Americas?
It is right now. Right now it's Canada and the United States. We have about 250 centers in Canada and about 125 in the United States. I will tell you, we've had many requests from China, India, other countries. We're just not there yet.
Sure.
But we certainly are interested in expanding.
Interestingly enough, I had a request from a student who had been in Canada and examined on your examination board and was wondering about whether that could be done over here. So
interesting.
So there definitely may be interest for you guys, but I can imagine it would be a huge step to go start examining all around the world. It would be a massive job.
Well, and but it's something we're certainly looking at. And we have had Canadian students, for example, who've gone to other countries for holidays, and sometimes we've had to work things out. It's easy with theory because it means sending a paper and having it proctored, but lots of opportunities for the future, that's for sure.
Oh, that's great. There's lots of growth opportunities, as you say. Now, one little question. sometimes you may have seen previous posts I've written or a couple of the podcasts you've listened to with regard to exams and the three pieces issue.
Yes.
How do you go about encouraging teachers to teach more than just the exam pieces? Or do you not find that's an issue over there?
That's a fabulous question. I wish I could say that it's not an issue, but I think with any kind of structured curriculum, there's a risk that people will teach to the test. And in fact, one of my colleagues in the United States was nervous about embarking on participation in this system because he was afraid that the students would just want to play the exam pieces, and was happy to find out that wasn't the case. I think one of the main ways that we do that, Tim, is through the celebration series. Now, our syllabus for piano and for all other instruments includes many more pieces that are in the collections. So, for example, if there's a piece that you always like to teach, and it's not in our celebration series, chances are it's still on the list. So, for example, in Level 4 celebration series, for a couple of editions, we had Schumann's The Wild Horseman. Mm-hmm. This time we put in the Happy Farmer, but if you want to play this Wild Horseman, it's still on the syllabus list. But if you've looked at our celebration series collection and compared it to some publications by some other exam boards that are similar, I think you'll notice that we have quite an extensive selection for each list, and that's quite deliberate. Within each book, we like to have a variety of types of pieces within each list. So a slower piece and a faster piece. A couple of pieces within the book might be a little bit easier for sort of moving into the grade, and a couple might be a little more challenge for moving out and into the next grade. So what we encourage our teachers to do is to play as many pieces from each list as they can, but not necessarily polish all of them. And then that gives a student a chance. Suppose they've played 5 Baroque pieces. When it comes time to select their piece for the exam, they can say, well, of the 5 that I played, this is my favorite, or this is the one I play the best. So we're very very interested in students exploring lots and lots of repertoire.
I understand, which is great, and how I obviously encourage people to do the same thing.
Well, the other thing is, Tim, the popular selection list, even students who don't choose one of those pieces for their exam perhaps, they have a whole list of famous tunes and pieces they want to play that they know are already at their same level, so they can be successful with them. And I think a lot of teachers use that popular selection list to help their students play some of the pieces they want to play for their friends.
I know you've sent me a number of links, which we'll talk about at the end. Is the list, the popular selection list, online, or is that a purchase? That's something you need to purchase?
So in fact, all of our syllabi, including the regular piano syllabus and the popular selection list, are available as printed documents, but they're all available for free online.
Fantastic.
And this is the first time we put all our syllabi online. This is something recent in the last couple of years. But interestingly enough, when we first started publishing the popular selection list, which is probably about 15 years ago now, we immediately offered it online and in print. And the print sales do quite well because if I think of my own situation, I like having the book to thumb through and look at, but online I can search titles, search composers, and so I think we'll continue to do that. That way, though, if you're in a country where you don't have access to purchase a syllabus that easily, you can go online, see what's there, explore the system, search for your favorite pieces, whatever you like.
Well, I'm also thinking for someone like me in Australia, a pop selection list sounds like a pretty cool reference anyway. So it's the sort of thing that I'm going to, have a look at and see what great arrangements you've recommended.
Well, and I think that became possible because more and more we had people like Randy and Nancy Faber, the people at Alfred and Hal Leonard, taking those pieces and creating rich arrangements for them for students that are not only engaging and sound like the piece, but also are suitable for the level at which they're studying. So you can get an arrangement of Star Wars at almost beginner, intermediate, advanced. It's cool.
Exactly. How many exam sessions do you offer during each year?
We offer 3. So we have what we call a winter session, which is in the United States, those exams happen in December. In Canada, they happen in January. Then we have a spring session, which is generally speaking May in the US and June in Canada. And we sometimes alter those dates for convenience of certain centers. And then we have an August session. The August session has been more recently introduced, and we find that a number of advanced students often take advantage of that session because they have that time from the end of school. Of course, our school year being flipped from yours, from the end of school until their exam time to really focus. And then we also offer the written theory exams during the same sessions.
Got it. Now, one of the big questions that people always have with regard to exam boards is the examiners and the differences in opinions and that sort of thing that happens. So how do you guys go about training your examiners to ensure standardization as much as you can?
I'm very pleased to answer this question because I've also been an examiner for about 15 years. And there's a standardized process that begins with somebody who's interested, who has teaching experience, who's a teacher. You must be a teacher.
Okay.
Does
that mean a registered teacher over there?
Not necessarily, no.
No, okay. Just a teacher of music.
A teacher of music. So if you've been doing some teaching, you have certain requirements, whether it's an ARCT or a bachelor degree or a master's degree, preferably some adjudicating experience, so you've been out to some festivals and so on. So those applications, the resumes come in and they're reviewed by the people in the academic office. And then the next step is the people who have the credentials and the experience that we require, and this information, by the way, is available online, are then interviewed. Following a successful interview, then we call them apprentices, are actually brought, they come to Toronto for a course. And the course lasts typically 3 to 5 days, where all of those people come into a room, and we often have sort of 20 to 25 people at a time, and we talk about the system. These people are already usually familiar with the RCM system, but not necessarily. We've had fine American pedagogues who didn't really know about the RCM system, but wanted to embrace it, had the experience. We come together for a course where we actually together will evaluate students and mark them and discuss the marks. And one of the interesting things that happens, often at the beginning, we see, some teachers are giving a student 70 and others are giving them a 90. Typically, by the end of these sessions, the marks come very close together and are within two or three marks. Upon successful completion of that course, the next step is that these apprentices go in the field and sit in with mentor examiners, experienced examiners. And during the course of these mentoring sessions, the trainees or apprentices actually participate in the exam with actual students. They write reports, but it's the mentors, the senior examiners' reports, who go to the parents and the students. And then usually the first day is sort of observing and discussing with the senior examiner how marks were arrived at and so on. Then they are given the opportunity to do parts of the exam. So they might do ear and sight. They might just do repertoire. They might do technique. And then eventually they're conducting the exam still with the mentor in the room. On an average, apprentices have 3 to 4 mentoring sessions. Now, those reports that they write during that training period are reviewed by our senior chief examiners in the office, who provide feedback and counseling for making sure that everything's coming along nicely. And eventually then those apprentices graduate into the college and begin taking on routes. So once an examiner is in the college, a couple of things happen for quality control. There is an annual pedagogy professional development session that is mandatory. So you have to come to the course to learn about updates, to discuss again, marking, and there are lots of activities and so on. As well as that, when you go out examining, suppose you've got a full day of examining, randomly in the operations department, a couple of your reports are pulled out and evaluated by a panel. And the formula is that something is taken from the beginning of the day, but also the end of the day. And what we're looking for there is clarity and of the comments and the writing. And we have 2 approaches. We have electronic marking forms, which about 51% of our examiners are using, where the marks go straight into the database, and others are still writing by hand. And there are various reasons for that. But those reports are reviewed, and the things that we're looking for are, do the comments match the marks that are assigned?
Yep.
Are the reports positive? You know, if a student is, even a student who is struggling, needs to be encouraged. So examiners are always looking for something positive to say, and we want to make sure that the student and the teacher who see that exam report know what the examiner is referring to. There's not some generic "good job."
Yes. Yep.
So it's quite a detailed and thorough quality control program that we have in place.
Well, it's great to hear that it continues to past the initial apprenticeship, that you do.
And yes, everybody.
Keep checking, and it does, yeah, for everybody. I think that's very important. It's a similar kind of arrangement to how our Year 12, our final year students exams are marked in Australia, at least in Victoria, where every now and then the examiner gets a paper pulled out and it's cross-checked and that sort of thing. I think, yeah, it's great. Now, you've answered my next question, which was regard to the marking scheme. It sounds like it's numerical because you mentioned some numbers. So is each section and each piece given a number to be marked out of?
Yes. So for piano, each piece that they play is marked out of a certain number, like 18 marks. We award 6 marks for memory up to level 7. And then there are marks for technique and a mark for each of the studies that they play. And then a mark for sight reading. Sight reading is out of 10 and ear training is out of 10. So altogether, it's out of 100%. What's great about this approach is that students become well-rounded musicians. A student who plays all their pieces well but hasn't spent any time learning to sight read or developing their oral skills will notice on their report that their mark has been lowered. And with my own personal experience, I've had a couple of students who haven't really been that diligent, about practicing listening to intervals and so on. But what happens is when they get their mark, if it's not, if it lowers their overall average, they often go back to the drawing board and realize that all aspects of the musicianship are important. So it's great feedback for the teachers. I'm sure that most of the time when a teacher looks at a report, they go, yeah, remember we talked about that.
It's often good to hear it from another person. I always tell my students. Yeah. You mentioned memory, 6 marks for memory. Is that for each piece?
For each repertoire selection, yes.
And of which there are 3, and the total marks 18 for each of the 3. Is that right?
No, 2 for each. Two marks for memory for each piece.
Oh, okay.
6 total.
Okay. I was going to say, wow, I've written a number of posts about my views on memory, so I thought, ooh, that's a very large mark for that. Okay.
No,
it's considered, but it's a small part of the process.
It's a small mark that recognizes the fact that the student has prepared for memory. But, some students, often adult students, for example, choose to play with music. And I would suggest that if that's their choice, often they make that mark up. From level 8 and upward, we're going to assume they're playing for memory. It's all bundled into this to one single mark.
Okay. It's really interesting because I'm not a memorizer. And I've always struggled with it. I'm much more comfortable with the music. But that would mean if I did an RCM, one of the lower exams, I couldn't get higher than a 14 for each of the pieces. Is that right? If I played with the music?
Well, it's so the pieces are out of 18 or 14, so 16 or 16.
So I'd always be 2 marks under if I used the music and played perfectly.
You'd get your full marks for your repertoire, but the memory, that 6 marks is a separate mark. So you'd get 0 out of 6. So the highest percentage you could get would be 94%.
Oh, okay. That's interesting because I haven't come across that in other exam boards. So that's an interesting differentiation that you guys have. Yeah.
It's more a reward for playing from memory, I think, than a penalty.
Yeah, no, I understand. Well, yes. Depends which way you look at it and which way you go, I guess. Now, just clarifying, the supplementary exams, you've got each student would need to be tested on sight reading, ear tests.
So they're not supplementary. It's
Okay.
all one exam. So I'll just describe how the exam goes.
Sure.
So student comes into the room and they have a choice of starting with their pieces or starting with their etudes and technique. Personally, I always advise my students to start with technique and get used to the piano, but some people are confident playing their pieces first. So the first part of the exam is either repertoire or technique and etudes. The second part is whichever one you didn't do in the first part. And then after that, we do the sight reading and we end with the ear training. So it's all part of one practical exam session. And the fact is the sight reading and ear test requirements don't take up a lot of the exam time. This is, again, just making sure that they're on track with everything.
Do you ask general knowledge questions?
We don't. I know that some boards do. We haven't started doing that yet because we really are focusing, I guess, on the musicianship and the playing of the pieces. Now, in terms of other exams, we have written exams for theory that begin at level 5. That moves into harmony, which is, analysis and writing music and so on. We have history tests at levels 9, 10, and ARCT. And then we also have just a full-blown analysis test that goes at the very senior level of ARCT. So up until that point, we do expect that students are studying theory from the beginning, but we're not asking them to do written exam until level 5. Interestingly enough, though, in March of 2016, we'll be launching a revised theory syllabus, which actually gives curriculum right from preparatory through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The only thing is there's no required written exam at those levels, but it's in response to teachers who obviously teach theory all along, but aren't sure how to sequence it so that it leads to that success at level 5. So we've now done that for them, and there will be a Celebrate Theory series with all of that information in it for students.
And I bet there's some teachers who go, oh my goodness, my student's suddenly at level 5 and actually I haven't done any theory. Oh my goodness, so I better catch up.
Right.
Is that a requirement of the test?
It is. So when you do a level 5 practical exam on any instrument, you get your report and your certificate for the playing portion of the practical exam. To get a comprehensive certificate that says you've really passed out of level 5, you need that practical exam and also the written theory component. We honestly believe that as students understand the structure and how the music is created and so on, they get a better understanding. It aids with memory and so on. And as you know, if you're playing a Beethoven sonata, being able to analyze and think about the harmony is a good thing.
Vital, yes.
Yes.
How long, or do you, with your syllabus, the pieces that you choose, you said you've obviously got quite an extensive list, an extra list, I guess. But for the pieces in a syllabus, is it 1 year that the syllabus lasts for those sets of pieces?
No. In fact, until now, and the plans are for this to continue, we revise that every 7 years.
Okay.
Now, a couple of reasons for that. The lists are extensive, so there's lots of variety, so we don't really need to worry about teachers running out of choices or becoming bored, because if they want to find a piece outside of the celebration series, all the standard repertoire and lots of other things are in the syllabus. The main reason for the 7-year period is in the printed books in the celebration series. If you've looked at them, you'll notice that one of the unique things about our series is that we really do try to include a lot of contemporary music that is still under copyright by other publishers, and we really appreciate the support of those other publishers who allow us to license those pieces at a fee, of course, to include in our series. And those licenses have typically been for a 7-year period.
Got it.
So, 2015, we knew that we had to revise the books, and in some cases we renegotiate the licenses for the same contemporary pieces. In other cases, we replace them. It gives us a chance to update with newly composed music. And at the same time, while we're revising the books, it gives us a chance to reevaluate the Baroque, Classical, Romantic lists as well, so that we're able to refresh. There are a few pieces in the standard literature that will probably always be in the series, like Clementi's Opus 36, number 1 and level 3, that lovely sonatina.
Classic, yes.
If we took it out, teachers would go looking for it elsewhere, so they might as well have it in this package. Bach's Musette in D major is in level 3 as well, and so some of these things have a home there, I think, for quite some time.
So the current books, where are you in the 7-year period at the moment? Or is it just about to change?
We just launched a brand new series in March 2015 at MTNA. So that series is the new series, and it'll be in place for the next few years.
Got it. Great. Now, just moving on before we finish to diploma level exams and higher, what do you offer there, either in teaching and performance, perhaps other options as well?
Good question. So a student who has completed their level 10 exam in any practical subject, including piano, can go on to do what we call an associate diploma. ARCT, which is Associate of the Royal Toronto Conservatory, believe it or not, Conservatory of Toronto. Used to be the Royal Conservatory of Toronto. We got changed it just to the Royal Conservatory, of course, years ago, but
the names remained.
The names remained, and everybody just calls it an ARCT. You need to pass your level 10 with a mark of 70% in each category or 75% overall before you can apply for an ARCT. And there are 2 types of ARCT. We have a performance ARCT, which is essentially a concert. 5 pieces in an etude. You go up on stage and play as you would a concert. We also have, for non-piano, what we call a teacher's ARCT, which is a one-time test where there are several components. There's a viva voce, where you actually demonstrate your teaching style. There's a written test, and then a playing test. For piano, several years ago, we split that up into 3 exams. So there's elementary pedagogy, intermediate pedagogy, and elementary goes with level 9, intermediate goes with level 10, and then the ARCT is then advanced pedagogy, so you can get a teaching certificate. Right. We also recently, about within the last 10 years, added a licentiate level. And the licentiate level, believe it or not, we have some young people who finish their ARCT while they're still in high school.
Doesn't surprise me. We have it here too.
As we have, people that coming back. Anyway, it's another very high level exam, which again is a performance-based presentation. One of the differences is at the licentiate level, you can choose to play a concerto, which is not available before that.
Okay.
So we have a few graduates.
That's quite unusual, actually.
Yeah, it's nice.
If a student moves from Australia, let's say, to Canada and has already completed our equivalent of your level 10, which would be our grade 8, I guess, can they go straight to the ARCT, or would they need to be reassessed at the level 10?
So what we do is we have some charts in the academic office that sort of show how you move from one exam system to another, and I think for the ARCT it would just be an evaluation of that particular applicant. For other students in other grades, if you move from Australia to Canada and you've done your level 4, chances are you're going to go into level 6 in our system. And when I think of that kind of a transition, or a transition from a student, say in the United States, who's never been in an exam system, what I encourage teachers to do is to look for common and familiar teaching pieces in our syllabus. So I'll say, which piece by Kabalevsky has your student been playing? Oh, okay, Clowns, that's level 3. Which, have you been playing 2-part inventions by Bach? Well, they're introduced at level 7. 3-part inventions at level 9. So we look for sort of familiar ground. But if you've been through a system and you're at that end level, if you're at level 8 in the Australian board or the associated board, then I think you need to be bringing those credentials and applying for an ARCT, because yes, that's about our level 10.
It's a good tip too, Elaine, for like me with this transfer student coming from Canada, trying to work out where they sit in our exam board.
Right.
I think that's a really great tip to just go, okay, well, show me, or jump online, have a look at the RCM syllabus for the level that the student's at, and work out where the pieces correlate, I guess.
Well, and it works because teachers around the world, there are certain pieces we all teach. And, so the student's going to have played something from the traditional canon that sits somewhere. So.
Exactly. That's right. Now, do you have online enrollment or results?
In fact, all of our enrollment is online, and all of our results are submitted back to the teachers and students through their email.
Right. So after their exam, a few days later or whatever, they can get an email with their results before you actually post the paper certificate and things?
So typically their results are available within 2 weeks, just the mark.
Right.
And then the written reports and everything follow 4 to 6 weeks later. So you can check in and see what your mark is, and then eventually you see the whole official report and everything with the comments.
Okay, great. Now, just starting to wrap up, one of the hardest things for teachers considering a change of exam board is that they generally feel very comfortable when they know a system. So I'm thinking maybe there's some people in using a different system. What advice would you give them for considering a change of system if they were going to consider the RCM, for example?
That's a great question, Tim. Thank you. If you go to rcmusic.ca, there are many resources available for teachers and for parents. And in the United States, it's this is longer, musicdevelopmentprogram.org. And I know that you'll be able to post some of these for people to check on.
Definitely.
We have summaries that talk about the strengths of our system, what we're offering, and so on. But really the best way is to look at the syllabus. Now, it's a big, hefty document, but I would start by saying, okay, intermediate level, levels 3, 4, 5, maybe. Let's see what the pieces are. I always tell people to start with the repertoire because that's something that's it's common language for all the boards. Now, what we found sometimes with people coming in, perhaps they're playing pieces that are level 7 or 8, but they've never done any sight reading. They haven't done much technique, and they haven't worked on listening to intervals and identifying chords and so on. So often our advice to those people is find the place where the repertoire sits, and then if there are other elements that need to be brought up to date, go back a grade or two and refresh. Now, the beauty of that is, first of all, that new student doesn't know anything. What's level 7? That doesn't mean anything to me, but I know I played this piece. At the exam, they always have a choice to play a piece from a grade higher. They have a teacher's choice. So in other words, if they're playing a more advanced piece than the level at which they're being examined, they can still use that. So sometimes that works for people who have been playing in competitions and so on.
Okay. I think, yeah, it's always going to be up to the teacher about what the way in which they teach. For me, it's about two things: the way in which I teach and how that works with the exam system, but also the outcome you want to achieve for your student. And
that's right.
It's not always one exam board or another, or exams in general are not always going to work or suit a student.
That's right.
So,
sometimes it's parents that drive this because they recognize that it's a national standard, and I'm sure you find the same thing in Australia. If you're in Vancouver with a teacher and you move to Toronto, that teacher in Toronto, if they know you've already done your level 8 exam, they know what that means. And it's one of the reasons the system is being embraced in the United States is because there are some wonderful state systems, but nothing national. So we're bringing that. And certainly in universities, both in Canada and the US, it's recognized. In Canada, it often says, come to your audition prepared to play a level 10 piece. It's that connected.
I'm interested just to pick your brains about the US system, because my understanding is, as you've said, that exams aren't a thing really so much there. Well, haven't been anyway. And it's more about festivals and competitions. But I have heard of something called the Achievement Program. That was what the Music Development Program was called before. It's the same thing. Okay. Yeah. So really, the RCM is that the only option at the moment for teachers in the US for a national level exam option?
As far as I know, Tim, there are many state systems. For example, the Music Teachers Association of California has a program called Certificate of Merit, which is similar in many ways to the RCM system, to the point that for many editions of our books, they've listed our books in their syllabus, and students use our books for their system. And it's been the highest adoption of MDP in the US because the students and their teachers are already familiar, so they can use the same pieces for Certificate of Merit and all the awards that come with that, and then also take our exams. We assign marks, and they don't actually assign numerical marks, but it's been really interesting to see how different states and school programs have embraced our system just because of the way it's structured. And I think there's a lot of flexibility, which is maybe one of the things that I would say compared to some other exam boards I've looked at. We give a lot of flexibility for teachers to teach the things that they're really, really engaged in.
You've made me want to go and have a look at your syllabus to have a look at the lists myself. Now, in the show notes page, I'm going to put a number of links that you've given me. Thank you very much for taking the time to share these. So we've got Elaine's very kindly given us links for resources for parents, a link to videos to actually show the exam room experience, which I was just having a sneak peek of before, and a number of other papers, research papers, a link to the teacher portal, because you've actually got quite a lot of information for teachers online, I saw.
We have.
And a teacher network. There's just fantastic resources there. So I'm going to put links to all of that in our show notes. But is there anything else, just before we finish, that we haven't mentioned that you wanted to say at all, or have we covered most of the bases?
I would like to actually just highlight some of the digital resources. This is a huge initiative for us.
Great.
So, for example, one of the publications that supports the system is called 4-Star Sight Reading and Ear Tests. First published, believe it or not, in 1939, and it's been updated many times. But Boris Berlin, who was a teacher here at the RCM until he was about 92, until he died, realized early on that if teachers are going to be good, or students are going to be good sight readers, they need to make it part of their daily practice routine. So teachers, even who've never seen Celebration series or heard about our exams, have been using 4-Star because of this bite-sized approach to doing some sight reading every day. Now, part of those books has always been a component for ear training, which was a bit funny because play this, try it, tell me what you heard. Well, they've seen the music. With new edition, published in 2015, all the ear test examples are available online. It's all digital with hints and actually played on an acoustic piano. And I think you know Chris Foley. I think he may have done something with you. So Chris Foley recorded something like 23 or 2,400 examples that are our audio files for this, because we wanted that human touch. So every interval and chord and so on. The other thing in this digital world, we're actually working on online courses for theory, and the first one will be that first level 5 or basic rudiments theory exam. But the most exciting thing, I'm wearing my little pin here that says that I'm an official RCM certified teacher. Many teachers who've completed an ARCT, they've completed other credentials, they've been submitting candidates, were invited in to become certified teachers with many benefits. We also have a teacher network, which again provides, and the difference between the network and the portal is there for everybody to look at. You just, I think, need to give us your name. But the network is a resource with a fee, where there are regular resources like theory papers, webinars, and so on. I think you may have met Forrest Kinney, who has written wonderful improvising and arranging books for us. There's a webisode a week from Forrest on various.
Did you just call it a webisode?
Yeah, webisode. Yes.
I've never heard that word before. There you go. Must be a Canadian thing.
I don't know. But in the teacher network, there are all kinds of resources for teachers, and we even have an online teacher certification course for people who want to learn more about teaching the RCM program specifically and being recognized. So it's a new and ever expanding digital world for us, and I encourage every teacher, no matter where they're from, to go to the website, look at the portal and see what's there. It's a way to learn about our program and just to expand your own teaching experience and have some fun and meet some colleagues.
Absolutely. And can I congratulate you for, all the digital stuff that you provide and the way that you're going with that. It's clearly what we as teachers need, and it's the way everything's going anyway. So it's great to see. Obviously, a very traditional organisation that's got huge history moving in that direction. It's so important, and obviously vital for your own business too, because it's you've got to keep up, haven't you?
Think about it. A few years ago, we wouldn't have been talking like this. It's not that long ago, so it's great.
And running a website myself, I know how time-consuming and expensive it can be. So it's good, but it's great to have. So look, thank you very much for all that. I've just made some notes of some of those things that you mentioned there. So I'll note them down. We've got your resources links, which will pop in the show notes too. And look, thank you so much for the conversation today. It's been really, really eye-opening and interesting.
It's been a real pleasure, and thank you for doing this. You're providing a great service too with your podcast and bringing us all together. Some of us have the privilege of going to actual events and meeting people in person, but we all want to learn and share together because we're also passionate about what we're doing. So it's been really fun. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much for coming online. And we'll say farewell now, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you. And if any one of my readers and listeners have questions, would you be happy to answer those if they come up?
Yes, I would indeed. And I'll simply say if I can't answer them, I'll find somebody who can.
Great stuff. All right.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Elaine. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.